What is up, my dungeon boss brethren? It is Friday. It is Fad Friday. This is our pilot episode of the Fad Friday. We are doing a full Ascension deep dive. Our hero character for the day is Abigail the Brutal. What we're going to do is we're going to break down all of her skills, traits, stats, such. We're going to look at what makes her tick, when to use her, when to not use her, pros, cons, you name it. We're going to try and do a deep dive and figure out what it is about Abigail that makes her worth using or not worth using. We'll try and do a little bit of comparison with another hero. We can ultimately make informed decisions as to her future in your game. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get in it. We're going to go to her hero page here. Full disclosure, she is not at my character level. That's neither here nor there for now. We're going to have a decent baseline in terms of what she provides, and we'll do some simple testing. For comparison purposes, I will be comparing her to Masuda Kira. We'll get to that in a little bit. They're both fully ascended. They're both level 34. They're both rogues. So it holds true as far as a valid comparison. In most cases, people will arbitrarily and unequivocally say that Masuda Kira is a better hero than Abigail the Brutal. We are going to put that to the test and see if that is indeed true or presumed to be true. We'll take a look at their stats and such and see where she falls. You can make your own distinction from there. Jumping into her character page, first thing we're going to do is look at her stats sheet. So we want to look at her traits first. This is arguably the most important part of any particular hero, short of their abilities, is their usability, and that is their stats. So first things first, Abigail is a rogue. She is fast. She gets to go first, but she has reduced attack and reduced defense. She then has Rage, deals increased damage the lower this character's health is. I don't have the actual calculations for that, but basically, she gets hurt, she does more damage. She gets angry, does more damage. It's kind of a Hulk thing. Not really easy to control, especially in PvP, because you can't control how hard they're actually going to hit. If there was some other skill out there amongst any other heroes that allowed you to preserve one hit point instead of a death blow, this would be an absolute brutal, no pun intended, a brutal trait to have because that would maximize its effect. I do not know the calculations though, so I don't know what the multiplier is. I don't know how that's going to stack up to any other buff or basic attack. One of the great things about Abigail is she has a fierce trait which buffs her attack by 15%, which directly counterbalances the negation from fast. So we lost 5 from fast, gained 15 back from fierce, plus 10 in attack. That is a bonus for a fast hero. You're not going to see that on too many people getting that bonus attack. Battle Surge, gain 1 energy for each enemy they defeat. This is going to be one of her best traits as well. It's going to allow you to get through her rotations a little bit quicker. In PvE, that's going to be critical. In PvP, it may not matter anyways, but it would certainly help if you were brave enough to put her on PvP defense. But in most cases here, um, you're trying to keep her alive for maybe a couple of rounds in PvP offense. But PvE, this is a great one to have because it keeps your team buffed as much as possible. Her marquee trait probably is going to be this Pwn Beast, 25 extra percent damage extra to beasts. More specifically, if you find nature beasts out there, if anybody is putting Jabber Clinchjaw in their tower or in their PvP team, great, you can one-shot that little guy, but otherwise you're probably not going to see too much. But still, 25% bonus damage, whether that hero is a bonus color or not. Basically anything other than water, and that's going to pay dividends. That said, there's not a lot of people using beasts in the tower or the PvP at the moment. Lastly, her final trait is Barbaric Frenzy. Increase the crit chance by 3% for all Barbarian allies. Interesting thing about this is she is her own Barbarian ally. She gets that trait and that buff regardless. So she gets that 3% for each one. You're not going to see too much more of this in terms of Barbarian teams. Without a Barbarian healer, I don't see that as being something that you're going to get a ton of output from, but 3% is better than 0%, so we'll take it. So next up, we're going to look at some of her basic stats here, see how they stack up. We are going to compare her with Masuda Kira to try and settle this argument in terms of who's better and why. So the first thing out of the gate, they're both fast, so they both suffer those same penalties. Abigail has an attack of 884. We compare that to Masuda Kira. He has an attack of 745. So well over 100, almost 150 point difference in attack. So basic attack, Abigail wins hands down. Not even a question. Okay, so she does more damage. That's pretty clear. What about defense? Do they die at the same rate? Masuda has a defense of 645. Abigail has a defense of 636. A difference of 9, we'll call that negligible. So they basically die at the same rate. Compare that with the health as well, 2797 to Masuda has 2780. Lower health, only slightly marginally better defense. Call it a wash on both of them. Abigail will not die faster, at least. They'll die at the same rate and does more damage. Crit chance, Masuda has the same 8%. No extra multiplier, no extra anything there. So in terms of base damage, it's pretty clear that Abigail is the better hero in my opinion. But there's more to it than just base damage. Now, sure, this is great for speed running dungeons on auto attack, basic attack. Abigail will do better than Masuda Kira. That is a stone cold fact for anything other than water dungeons, for example. The only difference that would be there is if you're running Masuda in every single dungeon, chaining them together one after another, after another, after another, he will never run into an element penalty where Abigail will run into attacking some water elements that will ultimately slow her down. But all things considered, she would put out more damage than Masuda. That means it must come down simply to their abilities. So let's take a look at Abigail's abilities and see why we might say that Masuda is better than Abigail or why you might not want to use her. So her basic attack, if we start off with that, does 400. We'll commit that to memory for now. That'll come into play a little bit later. Her first and probably marquee ability, Furious Charge, does 924, over twice as much as the basic attack. On top of that, it applies 2 stacks of Empowered first, which is going to give you bonus damage, 10%, I believe. That cannot be understated because you're getting a double the amount of attack to start with, plus this other buff on there. There's going to be a 10% bonus on there as well. We're going to get some massive damage out of that attack, and on top of that, it buffs the entire team. That is definitely why this is her marquee ability. Has a cooldown of 4, as we talked about with that trait that gives the energy back. This ability in PvE is going to one-shot a lot of heroes. It's basically going to mitigate this cooldown down to 2 turns if it's played properly. Her second ability, Burning Chop, does 985, does even more damage than Furious Charge does. It doesn't provide the buff, but it does provide a debuff. Generally, in most instances, Burning Chop will come after Furious Charge, so it will also benefit from that stack of Empowered, buffing this thing even more than previously. So while it doesn't provide a buff to the entire team, it should still be used anytime that it's up because it is going to put out a lot more damage than what the basic attack does. Now, where Abigail falls short of not just Masuda, but maybe a lot of heroes, is this third ability, the Rage Cage. At first glance, it sounds great to be able to hit multiple enemies at once, but there's some conditions involved here. First things first, the base damage on it. The single attack on it does less than a basic attack. Looks like 70 out of the 400. I'm not going to do the percent, but it's significant enough. It will hit twice, so this is going to do 600 total damage. So it's only doing roughly 50% more damage than a basic attack. Not twice as much as you would expect from hitting twice. So there's a bit of a penalty there. And on top of that, the only way that you truly get a benefit out of this is if you have a full barbarian team. Putting one extra barbarian, you get a little bit of a benefit out of this, but compared with Furious Charge or Burning Chop, it's just simply not usable. When we talk about PvP as well, the other nail in the coffin for this one here, it's got a dreadful 6-turn cooldown. Truth be told, you are never getting to this in PvP offense. It just isn't happening unless you're going against just an absolute non-damaging team and you're just going to stick around for 15, 20, 30 rounds as it is. You're just not getting to it. And even if you do, the damage is so lackluster that you're better off just going right back around to another Furious Charge or possibly even just doing a basic attack. I mean, yeah, you get a little bit extra, but it's such a poor ability. Um, so again, that particular instance, so her with a lack of an AoE, that's kind of an AoE, but because the damage is random, the only time you can really control that is if it's in a boss fight and you're just attacking a singular boss where you know you're going to get guaranteed hits on that boss. So a real big letdown when you get to her final ascension. Usually the final ascension should be the best one, and that is by far her worst ability. So any hero that's built that way is gonna lose some points against some other ones. Compare that to someone like Masuda, for example. Masuda has an AoE to start with, which is fantastic. Sure, the damage is low, 192 compared to his base of almost 400, so it's about half of that, but it's going to hit all four guys. So base of 400, his Death Blossom 200 each. It's going to end up doing twice as much damage as a basic attack when you consider spreading that out. Abigail does not have that. We all know and love Assassinate. If you're going to kill somebody, it's also going to do another attack on someone else. And if there's a couple low heroes, you're going to kill them all. That great utility. A little bit slightly higher cooldowns, but he's pretty powerful. And then Dim Mock prevents healing. Those are all three of these are great and useful skills, and the energy cost to replenish them are not that much more. It's pretty comparable. On top of that, Masuda has the ability to possibly end up with a Death Blossom every single turn. So at the end of the day, yeah, I'm going to believe everybody else. Masuda is pretty much unequivocally a better hero than Abigail, except for, like I said, in maybe speed running dungeons on basic attack, because Abigail will put out more there. Otherwise, we saw they're both going to die the same. So if they're both going to die the same, we want someone who's going to be the most useful. In that case, the AoE to start with is great, and even some of the other things that Masuda offers. That said, let's get into a little bit about Abigail. We're going to jump into a dungeon here just to see how she functions. Let's go find a dungeon that's at level. We'll pick Abigail and only Abigail. It's a level 34 dungeon, and she's level 34. Now, I can't guarantee that this is going to be equivalent to what PvP is going to be like. I would love for that to be the case. We're going to use the same kind of methodology for all the tests we would do, and assume that the stats are kind of like that. We know that because these aren't elite heroes or anything, that they're not going to have super high stats. But it's something to look at, right? We'll keep that in mind as we go forward. We know Abigail's basic attack is 400, and she has Beast Hunter. So in that case, there it's a 25% bonus. 25% of 400 is 100. So her basic attack is going to have this number somewhere around 500. Consider the defense of the blue hero and the penalty against them. We could try to reverse engineer some calculations. If anybody has the calculations, I would love to see them. We could use that in a testing environment to see a little bit more specifically where people shine and don't shine. But let's attack the highest one first, because that's going to be the most likely to be similar in level to her. So we'll attack the 33, dealt 1078. So pretty good hit on a blue hero. We knew the number was going to be 600. The difference in defense, however that calculation took place, was obviously significant enough. So if it did 1,000 damage on a water hero, it's going to do at least that much on that green beastie as well, because we get the bonus damage for being nature as well, and for beast we get a double bonus there, and that damage comes out to 1900, so almost twice as much damage. Not quite, but almost twice as much damage. And then we'll do the same thing against this guy here as well. Another 1300. That one was a high one, but that one was a lower level. Obviously, a huge disparity between defenses between those two. Now let's look at some abilities here. So let's heal her so she doesn't die. We know that Furious Charge is going to be a big one. So let's do Furious Charge against one of the higher wolves, for example. It's going to be at least 1,000. Twice as much from the attack, plus Beast Hunter, and the Empowered does twice as much damage than the previous one. Which is about what we kind of expected from the basic attack. We knew that the thing did about twice as much to begin with. The Empowered didn't seem like it was too much extra there. Lastly, let's do the Burning Chop. We knew this one is about twice as much as the 400, so 800 plus the stacks of Empowered, which is currently at 10%, plus the Beast Hunter and Nature. We're going to see a big number on this one here. 4,000. So basically twice this much and twice that much, and here we are. And basic attack there, still able to one-shot that one with the stacks of Empower on this attack. So all things considered, like I said, Abigail is going to be great for certain niche use cases. We'll use the Rage Cage here. I don't think that's even going to be enough to kill this guy. 900 and 900, pretty lackluster. And he killed me. That's no big deal there. Again, she's gonna die in PvP, so your ability to use her in PvP is going to be directly proportional to your skill with supporting heroes to keep her alive. Somebody like Zen to maybe buff her to keep her alive, but if you're going to use her in PvP and brave that storm, she's got to be first, and you have to be attacking a team that you know is not going to one-shot her. So someone like Shadowblade, Shade, they're likely to hit her right from the start and kill her. Could she soak damage from Masuda? I think she could probably take it, provided there's not a huge disparity in star levels or ascensions. She could probably take it, but at that point there, you're really only going to use her in PvP if you know that you're going to get a guaranteed kill out of her, which sadly is going to be what, Jabber Clench Straw. How many of those do you see on PvP defense? So not very many. So the only silver lining with her is she's a cheap hero. She's easy to ascend. She's easy to get tokens for. That's about it. It's great that she can buff the team with her main ability. But when it comes down to usability, unfortunately, she just doesn't stack up to even the only other rogue that we picked. That's not even considering other rogues like Black Diamond or Serenity or whoever else. So we don't know where she falls. We're a long ways away off from doing any type of rogue comparison. That's not going to be something I do until I get everybody at max level. So but that's going to wrap up our first Fad Friday on Abigail the Brutal. If there's anything that I missed or things that you wanted to point out or some counterpoints you'd like to make, feel free to drop comments on those. Otherwise, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you for watching, and remember, I make YouTube videos for the American working man, because that's what I am, and that's who I care about.